Oh, there's space. Oh, and there's the goal! And it's the substitute, Stina Blackstenius, and the sea of red around the stadium erupts. Arsenal, against all the odds, for a first time in a generation, they are the champions of Europe.
Hello and welcome to the Arsenal Women Arsecast on Arseblog.com. Arsenal Women Champions of Europe Arsecast on Arseblog.com. I'm not going to do any more of an intro than that because I think that's going to suffice. I think Andrew might be dropping in some audio here and there, so I'm going to let him do that and just introduce our co-host Jamie Spanger. Jamie, how are you doing?
Tim, I'm tired. I'm running off I reckon I got 2 hours sleep every night that I was away. I apologise to everyone listening. I've got half a voice. Champions of Europe. It's also Mr. Tim Stillman's birthday. So there is so much happiness in my heart right now. But Tim, I don't even know. I can't even tell you.
Well, we're going to try over the next hour and a bit. But yeah, you mentioned it's my birthday. We both mentioned that Arsenal are the champions of Europe, and I've never done this on an Arsenal Women Arsecast, but we're recording this one with a beer, ladies and gentlemen.
Get in, Timmy. Oh, guys, it's a big day. It's a big day. Tim's on the cans. Arsenal Champions League winners. It's a good day.
Yeah, it's not my first one. I'm fine. Don't worry. Like this isn't going to be like the Katie McCabe edit. But it's not my first one today because it's been an emotional weekend overall. And just first off, before we get into like the nuts and bolts of the game and that, oh my God, what does this mean? Just your trip to Lisbon, Jamie, and your experience of it. Can you sum that up in words?
Tim, I just genuinely think this has been the best period of like my life, not just as a sports fan, but just as a human being. A couple of us, so Beth, my partner, and then also my friends Tom and Dot, we flew into Porto really, really, really early Friday. I left the house at 2 a.m. We took a coach from Tottenham Hale to Stansted Airport, flew into Porto, a 3-hour coach to Lisbon. A lot of Barcelona fans on that coach, and then it was just like about getting involved, going to the fan zone. There wasn't really a moment where I thought, okay, we're playing in a Champions League. I just thought, I'm on holiday. This is really fun. Woke up Saturday. Obviously, then it felt a bit more real, and I was kind of quashing down the hope that was in my heart for the game. And then going as a fan, I made the decision to go as a fan, go with the Arsenal faithful, and I'm so glad I did. It was an experience I wouldn't trade for the world, but being able to hang out with everyone, the whole Arsenal family after that game, obviously seeing you, Tim, everyone down Pink Street, the fans that came were just, I don't even have the words. I'm going to get emotional. It was unbelievable. The atmosphere was unbelievable. The days that followed were the best of my life. I've watched the game I think 3.5 times now. So a lot of travel involved, Tim. I just thank you to every Arsenal fan that traveled. Thank you to every Arsenal fan here in North London and all over the world, because you guys, best fans on earth. We are so lucky to be a part of it.
Yeah, I won't go too long on. I arrived on the kind of Thursday afternoon, and that was really the only time. Thursday evening, our videographer Jason went as well, and again, big thank you to Andrew, our editor, because he funded both of us to go, and it wasn't cheap. Hotels, hotels and flights, not cheap at all. And Jason, we didn't get him accreditation, but he was in with the fans. Might have snuck his camera in. It wasn't straightforward for me to get accreditation. Was rejected initially, but don't mind thanking some people at Arsenal who intervened on my behalf, which was really nice. So I got in with press. I'd have gone with the fans anyway if that hadn't happened. But yeah, it was mammoth. Had the absolute privilege of talking to Ian Wright on Friday lunchtime at his hotel. Loads of like video content around on Friday, and it's one of those trips where I think I ate like one meal a day basically. That varied. One day it was breakfast, one day it was lunch, next day it was dinner. Match day -1, all of that is like, it's been such a carousel, but it's been so amazing. And I think for me as well, usually, and this is not a complaint at all, because like the role I have is just an immense privilege, but usually, I don't really do the social side around games because I'm working. And, I used to, for example, kind of go to the supporters club meetups, particularly away games. I don't really do that anymore because, maybe it's not appropriate or whatever. But this time, particularly before the game, Jamie, I was on Pink Street, and it was really nice because Jason forgot one of his cables and he had to go back to his hotel to get it. And so it just gave me half an hour on my own. And I just, that scene in Shawshank where they sit on the roof and they all just like drink a beer in the sun. I just went and like stood in the shade, and I just had like 1 pint before the game. And I was just like looking around and taking it in and thinking, wow, like, this is incredible. Like, I was there in 2007, but like the scale and the interest and the fan culture around this is something else. It was so great to kind of go out afterwards and see so many people, some of whom I know very well, some of whom I don't, and just do all that stuff that don't usually get to do, really, working on games. But yeah, just immensely emotional. I something I wanted to pick up, and this might be the only slight down note of the podcast. I picked up from a lot of fans, Jamie, stuff about, and we see this with UEFA events, how the scant regard they have for supporters. I was hearing stuff about people having water bottles taken off them, people having sunscreen taken off them. It was 29 degrees. Half the Arsenal enclosure was right in the bright sunshine. Did you experience anything like that?
Yeah, the water was the biggest one. Like, empty bottles were being thrown out, which is never great. But also the queue for the water was nuts. People were waiting. I think we waited an hour prior to kickoff, and people weren't getting food. They just wanted water. So that wasn't great. Sunscreen, I had one person that got their sunscreen taken away. Lucky, like, sorry UEFA if you're listening, but we shoved our sunscreen like into the back of like our pockets. So they didn't find that. We were just kind of sharing with everyone around us. But we got that. It's badly organized, especially when it's 28 degrees. It's steaming hot, and it's a Champions League final. It was harsh because I saw a lot of fans struggling, especially halftime. I can't remember who it was. They said the water was ridiculous. They missed the first 20 minutes of the second half. So yeah, it's a bit of a down note in terms of UEFA. I know they can struggle in that area, and it's not great given the circumstances.
Yeah, I think you always hear this with UEFA events. There was a men's Europa League final a few years ago in Sevilla where they were doing that, with taking water off people. Like, you imagine what Sevilla's like in late May, like 35 degrees, and they were taking water off people. It's absolutely insane. It really is. And it's not a surprise as well, particularly at men's finals. You get things like when Liverpool were in the Champions League final a couple of years ago. I just don't think UEFA think it have it as an agenda item at all, support experience when they arrange these things. But moving away from that, something that was put together, and look, I think big credit to Arsenal for putting something together with the competing international schedule and all the difficulties around parades and stuff like that. But there was a trophy lift event today outside the Armoury. We were both there. How did you experience that? And shall we say the Katie McCabe show?
Honestly, like I said earlier, we were still in Portugal at 4 a.m. this morning. So we landed at Gatwick at 9:30. Ran the Gatwick EasyJet flights. They drop you off at the North Terminal. Anyone that knows Gatwick Airport, obviously the train's in the South Terminal. We had to sprint through the entirety of the North Terminal, get the shuttle train. Ended up on the train as it pulled up. It was the last one for half an hour, and then we got there like 5 or 10 minutes before the trophy lift had happened. Alex Scott was kind of revving the crowd up. Funnily enough, I actually got there just as you got a shout out, Tim, which I thought was very special. So deserving. I'm so glad that they did, because Tim, side note, you provide everyone the Arsenal Women coverage, and you have been doing for over a decade now. So thank you for doing that. But yeah, it was crazy. It was nuts. I started at the back, and gradually I was like, I want to get closer. I want to be with the fans that know the chants. It was special. Katie McCabe, though, genuinely, there is no one else in this world like Katie McCabe. I was getting Jack Wilshere flashbacks. I think everyone was saying that at the time, but she is one of a kind. She's so funny. The best part was when she's standing up, she won't stop with the mic, and like Kim Little just like pulls her down and is like, that's enough now, mate. But I honestly think if I left my house in Angel right now, I'd probably see her stumbling down the street.
Yeah, I heard that if you swear 3 times on a live transmission, they have to cut it, and she did it twice. So I think that's why the mic was kind of taken away. The only bit I recorded was her singing Stina Blackstenius' song. Not particularly in tune, it must be said, but that's not a criticism. But a pretty iconic moment when she sang her own chant on the stage. That had a lot of time for that. And Win the Dog being hoisted like the trophy. Not sure what the RSPCA would make of that, but but some really, really nice moments. And yeah, I was like privileged enough to kind of see it from the side of the stage and have a word with Leah Williamson afterwards. And yeah, there were some. I think I just think it's great, like when players show who they are and you really get to see their characters. And I don't like, if there's one player in that squad you'd pick to take centre stage, maybe Manu, maybe like a bit more of a PG version, but I could see Manu doing that. But like, it's definitely going to be Katie McCabe and Chloe Kelly, by the way. Excuse me, just randomly running into the Tollington for 2.5 minutes and running out again. Yeah, it's just great. It's like the whole vibe when you win something big like this is everyone just lets their hair down. I've hugged a lot of people this weekend, some of whom I know very well, some of whom I kind of know, some of whom I don't know. And it's been absolutely great. But perhaps we'll come back to a little bit of that in the questions in part 2, because we've got some vibey questions and some football questions, and it's difficult to know where to start with both of those things. But we spoke in the preview, Jamie, about what Renee could do, what she probably would do, and I think we both came to the conclusion that it would be the team. It was the team. Really, the only question marks with Barca are what they're going to do on their left. Is it going to be Brutz or Rolfer? I mean, they're both very similar anyway. But the key is it going to be Claudia Pina or is it going to be Salma? And obviously they're very different players, and they went with Pina from the start. What did you make of the kind of starting lineup?
Yeah, in terms of an Arsenal perspective, I thought, you know what, that's bold. And like, as we'll speak about in terms of how gradually my hope built, like it actually was building before the game. I was like, okay, maybe there's a chance here. And I think when your manager has the guts to put that starting 11 through in a Champions League final against 2 back-to-back Champions League winners, like it basically is a signal message that she really, really believes in what this team can do. And maybe I'd be saying that very, very differently if she had put out this lineup and Barcelona had turned up in a different aspect. But yeah, I think from that perspective, it wasn't about the players, it was about the tactics, and it was about how Renee worked with those players. And I think that is exactly why we need to highlight what she can do, because it's not just personnel. I think with Jonas, it was very often a personnel shift. It was, we're changing players in order to make like tangible impacts. With Renee, we're almost always seeing the same players, but nearly every game is played differently. Like we spoke about the Lyon game, it was basically the same team, but the press was completely different. This Barcelona game, the press was completely different. The way that they played was different. Stina came on in a completely different manner. She knows her skill set, but she came on a little bit earlier than she usually does. It was about stretching the team. So I think what this was, yes, it was the same starting 11, but it was implemented differently. In terms of Barcelona, I think Claudia Pina is a more threatening player than Salma. However, I think that Pina coming off the bench is more dangerous. So I was a little bit safer with that because I said, okay, Emily Fox, I believe in her to contain her. I'd rather that than Emily get caught off guard in, let's say, the 65th minute by Claudia Pina. So yeah, those are my 2 kind of takes on either side.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of, because like I fully expected that team. I think you're absolutely right. It's just a case of what they were going to do. We spoke about, and I spoke about this with Alex Ibaceta as well on the preview show, like Real Madrid and Man City beat them, and maybe there was a bit of a kind of a blueprint there in terms of like picking your moments to press, picking your moments to go into a deep block. I think we saw some of that. I think we saw Arsenal pressuring Barcelona's defenders, but maybe doing it less when it came into Bonmati and Alexia. And, when the ball did get to those players, it's like, okay, we're not going to press those guys off the ball. So at that point, we go back, and Arsenal were pressing them wide because they wanted crosses to come in. Basically, they backed themselves to deal with that. But yeah, I wasn't surprised at all about the starting lineup. I thought it was all about the kind of execution. And one of the things that I think Leah Williamson said this to us today was like, you can see in the first 20 minutes, we didn't do a lot of passing out from the back. We went over because we talked about don't concede, basically. So don't give them anything. Don't get yourself into like stupid trouble or anything. And then as the game goes on, we'll grow. Maybe they'll get a bit anxious, which I think is basically exactly what happened. So I think another couple of interesting details. One, Beth talked about how Renee named the team early in the week, and the subs were playing against Arsenal in the selected team in an 11v11, and she was talking about how the subs had to be Barcelona, which was actually like, first of all, like obviously just a pretty standard training drill, I think, but obviously it keeps the subs involved. But she was saying like the subs knew they had to train really, really hard, because basically their job was to make it as hard as possible for the starting lineup, so that when they came into the game, they could feel comfortable playing against their intensity. And I think I've spoken to so many people in the last couple of days on I say off the record, but having chats with people. So I can't remember really where I got this from. I'm pretty convinced it's not privileged information, but I think the players talked about how they kind of earlier in the week said, no, we want to play more like us. We want to play our game a bit more. And they made some tweaks. And I think that really speaks to Renee's approach in terms of players feeling empowered to say, no, actually, we want to tweak the game plan a little bit. And the manager, being an emotionally intelligent enough leader to go, okay, if that's, you're the guys that are going to be doing it. If that's what you want to do, we'll go with it. And, I mean, we might come to this. I think this is an absolute tactical triumph from the manager, and I think we've seen several of them in this competition. But nevertheless, you're going to get under pressure from Barcelona. You have, as much as we were trying to force Barcelona wide, Eva Payol gets a header in the first 6 minutes, heads just wide. If that goes in, it's very, very different. And then I think a moment I haven't seen talked about enough, Jamie, maybe it was because I was on the other side, is one player we talked about maybe in the last few games we talked about should Lotta play ahead of Steph Catley. But when Aitana Bonmati turned in on her left foot in the penalty area, my heart sunk. And Steph Catley pulled off a heroic block. And I think that really set the tone for an amazing defensive and off-the-ball performance.
No, it certainly did, Tim. Oh, I'm going to get emotional. This is crazy. No, it did. I think like Steph and Emily and Katie, they were all brilliant. But when you've got someone like Leah Williamson having a game like that, it's obviously the attention's going to be on her because she was absolutely flawless. I can't express that. We'll speak about it more. But Steph Catley is a player that is very no nonsense compared to Leah Williamson. I think we saw this especially in the opening half. Is a lot of the time when Barcelona come into press, Leah Williamson finds and picks out a target, either in Emily Fox or in the midfield group. Steph Catley clears the ball away. Like it's obvious that there's a tactical difference in the players. They're not the same profile of defender in that way. Leah's so good with her feet. Steph sometimes just needs to get the ball away from danger, but she's so reliable and she has been all season. Like Arsenal had an issue in that centre half position. Lotta's obviously been in and out of injury, and Steph Catley stepped into that spot. And I think that she played with the cannon on her shirt on Saturday. Every player on the pitch did, but it makes me so emotional, honestly. It makes me really emotional. So it was sensational. I think it certainly just set the tone for the afternoon. I'm going to stop talking about Steph Catley, otherwise I'll cry.
Yeah, I genuinely think that was not a turning moment in the game necessarily, but a really, really important moment. I mean, it stops a goal, so it's obviously important. But I think after that, Arsenal really start to grow into the game as a possession force. And I won't lie, Jamie, I came into this game thinking one of my mental benchmarks was don't do what Chelsea did in 2021. Don't have this game be over in the first 20 minutes, because Barca can do that to you. And once we got to that stage, I think that was a big benchmark for the players. I think they knew that if they could settle into the game at 0-0, and again, Leah said this to us today. She talked about how like we'd growing confidence and maybe they would not necessarily shrink, but they're used to being a couple of goals up in 20 minutes, quite frankly. And so, Arsenal start to come in as a bit of an attacking force. So you get Kim Little crosses to Caitlin Ford on the back post and she just can't quite get her header off. And then Arsenal really come into it. There's another like miniature turning point for me, which is when Emily Fox burns, I think it's Pina.
Yep.
Absolutely alive for pace, where she looks penned in and then she just pushes the ball about 10 yards in front of her and hits the turbo jets and goes past her. And I think that was another like little mini turning point where it's like, like we've got players that can worry them. We've got players that can do things that their players can't do. And then it kind of builds, to a bit of a crescendo. And then Arsenal, we think we've gone 1-0 up. And Frida Mornham puts low cross in. Irina Paredes puts the ball into her own net. It's then ruled out for offside. And it was correct decision. And I think actually, even if we didn't have VAR, I think the flag would have gone up anyway. To be honest, I think the linesman left it and thought, which is what they're asked to do. But I was really worried at that moment, Jamie, because I thought I could hear it lifted the Barca fans. And I kind of I remember I tweeted this. I kind of said, we've really got to look after the next 5 minutes because this might lift them and it might take something away from us. How did you feel when that goal was ruled out?
Yeah, I am actually never getting invited to a party amongst any of my friends because as soon as the ball hit the back of the net, I was like, guys, it's offside. Like, Frida Mornham's offside. And I was like not celebrating. They were like, no, it was offside. It's a stinger as well because it comes from the cross. It's obviously an own goal. If Frida was onside, it's a stinger because she can still be onside to play that ball and Paredes is still going to put that in the back of the net, right? It's not really like it's given her a clear advantage. However, I'm with you, Tim. As soon as that ball hits the back of the net and it gets ruled for offside, the Barcelona fans, and it's going to happen, right? You're in Portugal, not very far from Spain. Ludicrous prices to get to Lisbon from London. So there's a lot of Barcelona fans in that stadium. They were very, very loud. The Arsenal fans did an amazing job, but there was a complete energy shift. I think that the Barcelona fans kind of woke up when that got ruled offside. And I think the squad maybe felt that. I was nervous when you kind of see Bonmati clapping and pointing up for the reset. And I'm a little bit nervous in the caliber of player that they have. And I think we've seen a lot of times this season where the heads do kind of drop as soon as something maybe doesn't go wrong, but just doesn't necessarily go right. We've seen it a lot in the last couple of weeks, especially against Aston Villa and Brighton as well. So it was a matter of this is so crucial. And I honestly think the most nervous I was during that game was around that point to half time, because I was saying if they even get 1-0 up before half time, that does feel like a bit of a mountain to climb because you're playing Barcelona. Not only are they so good in attacking strength, they're so defensively sound as well. So yeah, that was not a great moment, Tim. I'm with you on that. I was very nervous about the shift. And I think given the fact that those results went the way they did at the Broadfield and at Villa Park, seems a silly comparison, but I do think it's valid. I was certainly a little bit shaky.
Yeah, like we conceded right on half time in both those games. And I mean, actually, and again, Leah was asked about this today, and she kind of said, well, I was quite relaxed. I took it as a sign that we could hurt them. I just used the VAR break to go over to the dugout and get some more information, and just thought, okay, we ride this. And again, I think a lot of the players will tell you that comes from Renee, that calmness that they all feel. All of them talked about feeling not just calm, but excited coming into this game. They all talked about the preparation. They all talked about how, she told us to enjoy it, enjoy like the build up and all of that. And I think you could see that because we managed that next few minutes. And actually, it's Arsenal that have really the only other chance of the half. And it's Frida Mornham. And we talked about this a bit in the preview. We talked about Amandine Henry 2 years ago smashing one into the top corner from long range. And we talked about how Frida Mornham's the most likely candidate to replicate that. She very nearly did, and Katakol turns it over. And, how did you feel at halftime?
Yeah, on the Frida shot, I'm so glad she took it. She needs to take those chances, even if they don't go in. It does enough to just let the goalkeeper know that you're there. At halftime, I felt pretty unwell. I felt a little bit nauseous. I did feel for the people in front of me because I was like, look, if I throw up, it's going to go all over you. So I do apologize. I don't actually think I've ever felt so terrible at a sporting event, which is fair because it's a Champions League final. But I was still optimistic. And I think at that stage, it got to a point, Tim, where it was, okay, we're playing so well. Like we're competing with the best team in Europe so well that this would possibly be the worst way to lose. I think it's a big juxtaposition to the way that Chelsea performed, right? Especially at home at the Bridge. They were the game was over in the first leg, but at the Bridge, it was a mental collapse. And I just thought, we are so close and we are playing so well. And it's funny because the way I perceived that game was we're playing so well. And then I rewatched it on the coach back to Lisbon from Porto yesterday. And I thought Barcelona really opened strong. And then I came back and I watched it again today. And I said, no, we were really knocking. Like Arsenal were really knocking more than once. There were a lot of chances. Barcelona hold the possession. But like you said, Tim, that's a tactical decision. You can't press Barcelona aggressively because all they're going to do is play football around you. So I was rewatching that game today and I thought, yeah, that would be robbery if we didn't at least pull off some sort of close result. So yeah, in summary, hope really did threaten to kill at halftime.
Yeah, we in the kind of match day vlog, I did a bit at halftime, and I was like, 0-0's fair. Like this is a tight game between equals, as far as I can see it, which I'm happy to admit was not what I was expecting. And I kind of thought, okay, yeah, this is, but the thing is, I kept because I get so anxious about these games, and I didn't feel nervous coming in because my expectations were slightly low. And then, obviously, it's the hope that kills you and all of that. But I know in retrospect, I was emotionally protecting myself because I was kind of saying to myself, okay, we're competing. Like we've done so far what I wanted us to do, which was to compete. And this game's going to come down to a moment or a fine margin. And if it goes for them, it'll be heartbreak, but fair enough. Like I can't really ask anything more of the team. But then you're right, like you start getting that bit of expectation and you start going, oh, maybe this can happen because I think this game's going to be 1-0 and it could be 1-0 to either of us. And that means it could be us. And then the kind of the nerves kick in. But I think the first 15 minutes of the second half, that was the only time I felt Barcelona were properly on top. Pina hits the bar, which, to be fair, is a big deflection. Onabache has a couple of shots, one of which just wide. Van Domselaar saves from Bonmati. There's lots of Barca pressure. And not only that, but I could see Arsenal couldn't get out anymore. I could see that they were just clearing the ball and it was coming back. And how about you, Jamie? In that first 15, 20 minutes of the second half, I started to think, this is the real Barca. They're really turning up now. We've got to hang on.
Yeah, certainly, Tim. I think a lot of that came from the midfield as well. It came from the central areas. I still don't think that Caroline Graham-Hansen really posed a threat in this game.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of it came from the central areas, and that arrives from the fact that, again, Renee Slegers doesn't want to press those ball users, and that's fair enough. However, there's only so much you can do when you've got players like Aitana Bonmati, Alexia Putellas, Patry on the ball, right? They're gonna work their magic no matter how good your game plan is. I think this comes down to a couple of things, Tim, and we spoke about it in the preview. We spoke about, look, Arsenal are going to need to be perfect, Barcelona are going to need to be a bit shaky, and Arsenal are going to need to be lucky. Like Claudia Pina's shot taking a deflection from Emily Fox and hitting the bar, that's a lot of nice luck because, Melchi de Mornay's shot takes a deflection from Emily Fox and it goes in the back of the net. It's just moments like that in a Champions League final. We see them happen. I do think that is a moment of luck. It's kind of a moment of the football gods want to provide you with something. And that's when the fans really felt, hang on, this is a moment now. Also, really fun stat for you. This one's an obvious one, but there's a background one as well. Every game that Barcelona have lost this season, they haven't scored in the first half, right? So Arsenal have gotten that. But every game they've lost, they've hit the woodwork in, I think it's between the 45th and 70th minute. So by that stage, I was like, okay, we're winning the Champions League. No, but in all seriousness, Tim, it felt like a moment of shakiness. Again, it comes back to the fact that Arsenal were compact enough to deal with that and they handled the pressure in the end.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, all 11 of those players put absolutely bloody everything into this game. But I think in this period in particular, and look, Chloe Kelly and Caitlin Ford ran marathons, Alessia Russo, like the midfield too, they were so compact. But I think in this period, the back four deserves so much credit because there was so much, and the goalkeeper, there's so much coming into the penalty area. I mean, don't think Daphne took a long goal kick the whole game. And I think that shows you probably that like her ankle's still not 100%. But in this period, I think that the one thing, we spoke to Caitlin Ford in the mix zone afterwards, and she was talking entirely about the defending. She was asked about the moment she celebrated blocking the cross in the first half like it was a goal. And a monumental defensive effort, out of possession effort from everyone. But I really think this is the area of the game where the centre-back shone. And we spoke a bit about Steph Catley because of her block, but Leah Williamson, 14 clearances on the day. And what I love about this Leah performance is, everyone talks about her rightly as like a passing centre-back, as a playmaker, and she's world-class at that. I think she's a really underrated defender.
Mm-hmm.
But this was a proper, almost old school, almost like Jen Beattie, Louise Quinn style centre-half performance. And I think she got the Arsenal.com or Arsenal's player of the match. And all 11 of those players could have, and a couple of the subs could have claimed that. In fact, one of the subs did get the official UEFA award. But I thought that this was an all-timer from Leah Williamson.
Certainly, Tim. There's not enough words to describe how good she was on the afternoon. It was honestly sensational. I think that, again, it comes from the fact that these players are believing in the system that they've been provided with. It comes from the fact that Renee Slegers has played this back four, right? Leah Williamson and Steph Catley conceded 5 against Aston Villa and then 4 against Brighton and then 3 against Man United. That's a lot of goals against teams that are nowhere near as threatening as Barcelona are. Eva Payor scored 42 goals for Barcelona this season. It's best striker in the world. She didn't register a single shot on target in this game. Leah Williamson's performance wasn't just like defensively one of the best showings I think she's had in an Arsenal shirt, but it was her leadership in the way that from minute one, she was the best player on the pitch and she set the tone. It was the fact that she was so composed in the fact that I don't really care if you're Eva Payor or I'm Leah Williamson. I'm playing for Arsenal in a Champions League final. I want to do everything that I can. And not once did she look over-passionate. She didn't look stressed. She didn't look like she was playing like the way that we maybe see someone like Katie McCabe play. It was a cool head the entire time until the final whistle. And I think that drags on to the rest of the team. This comes down, again, I think we need to pat Renee Slegers on the back again, because she has gone with this back four despite what's happened in the last fortnight. She's gone with this back four. The team's always had one eye on Barcelona, right? We can look at those games now and laugh because of what happened on Saturday. But you look at someone like Sonia Bonpastor has gone into this semi-final and they're 4-1 down. And even before then, she's decided, my left back, Sandy Baltimore, has played there all season and been our best player all season. I need to shift her away. I need to bring on Niamh Charles. I need to do something to nullify Barcelona really, really quickly. Otherwise, we're not going to win this game. That is a manager that is trying to suit the best team in the world, which I understand. Renee Slegers has gone to this match and said, I want to play the way Arsenal want to play, the way the players want to play. And that is exactly why players like Leah Williamson were given the freedom to perform at the level she did. This comes from belief from the manager, comes from belief from the players. It comes from the players having their voices heard. And I think Leah Williamson is a player that has always been sensational. But to come back from an ACL injury and perform the way she has been performing. She's had some bumps. Every player has this season. It's been ridiculous of a roller coaster season. To come into a Champions League final and perform that like that after doing your ACL, she's completed club football. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And I think like we were all happy for Kim Little, but we kind of forgot about that moment as well. And it was so beautiful.
Yeah, and I think both fullbacks were excellent as well. I think we just take Emily Fox's brilliance for granted, completely for granted. Katie McCabe locked down Diani away at Lyon. She's locked down Caroline Graham-Hansen. I don't really care about these things, but how she didn't get in the UEFA team of the tournament, I don't know. Mm-hmm. Believe she broke a record for minutes played in a Champions League campaign this season. But, when it's come down to it, she's locked down to the best. I mean, for me, Hansen has been the best right winger in women's football for at least 5 years. So, huge credit to her as well. But at this stage, Arsenal were always going to have to use their bench, particularly with the heat, but because they got quality on the bench as well. And Renee uses the opportunity to bring on Beth Mead for Chloe Kelly. It's fair enough. Chloe Kelly had to do a lot of running, kind of doing that shuttling, protecting the fullback, but also going in field to crowd Barca out. It was very, very hard work. And then bringing Stina on for Frida, putting Russo in the 10. And this was both of these, not just because of the goal and the way it came about, but both of these changed things a little bit because, I've talked about like Stina's maybe a bit typecast, but the reason she scores in so many big games is because against big opponents, they don't put 10 behind the ball, they leave space and Stina can stretch in behind. That's why she scores against Man City all the time, why she got a good goal scoring record against Chelsea. Her Champions League goal scoring record's really, really good. And it's because when you're not playing a deep block, Stina is a great, great player to have. And we won't go to the goal just yet because I think Barcelona have a chance from Payor just after they come on. But it just changes what Arsenal can do in the game. And I think it just stopped them having that option, particularly to Stina, just stopped them getting penned in quite so much.
Yes, certainly. It absolutely did. I was watching the TNT coverage when I got back to London today. And also shout out to Jen Beattie and Ellen Ellard. I thought they did such a phenomenal job on comms. But I like Stina speaks in her post-match interview, and she's spoken on many different outlets and interviews about the fact that she needs to stretch the pitch against Barcelona. I think the best thing that happens is Irene Paredes gets a yellow card. She's their slowest defender. She gets it before this happens. Mappy Leon didn't look fully fit, especially I think she goes down a little bit. She obviously gets taken off a bit later, but there was a couple moments in that second half where she did look a little bit slow on the ball just because I think she may have copped a knock earlier, maybe a couple of weeks ago. Stina has opportunities to score before she does actually score. She's straight away down the side. I think it's Emily Fox that puts in a really, really good ball, and there's a really, really good chance by Stina Blackstenius, which is, again, it's a tactical shift. And I think we've spoken about this copious amounts of time, but the biggest thing for Stina Blackstenius is she has a real role at Arsenal now, and she always has had a role under Jonas Eidevall, but in the same way that Alessia Russo has a clear-cut role under Renee Slegers, Stina Blackstenius has the exact same thing. Alessia Russo is the starting nine. She's the player you build your team around. Stina Blackstenius is the player that plays in the big moments against world-class teams. And it felt like she came on and she lifted the energy straight away because she knows that's her description. I think the midfield is so intelligent in this as well, because when you've got players like Kim Little and Mariona Caldente, who are among the two most experienced footballers in the world right now, they can adapt to that shift so quickly. And especially, this is the one time, I'm not usually a fan of Alessia Russo dropping into the 10, but I think her dropping into the 10, knowing the game state and how Mappy Leon and Irene Paredes are kind of pressing on her back, right? It's hard to do a hold-up play against physical centre-backs. They're so technical, but they're actually really, really strong on the ball as well. So Alessia gets discounted, but she's then also aware of their game. So she's also able to help feed Stina through the 10. I think all this is every player on the pitch is so clued into what's about to happen. And for some reason, Barcelona aren't. And I think that's very, very surprising because Arsenal are going to make this change. They're going to bring Stina Blackstenius on against a team like you in a final when you're playing a high line and you're trying to play possession football. I don't think Barcelona were quick enough to respond. I don't think their fullbacks, they stretched far too wide. They didn't support the centre halves, and Stina Blackstenius went through on them before she scored the goal two or three times. So it was more like Renee Slegers outcoached Barcelona completely, but the players were so switched on in order for it to not be a slow burn transition. It happened immediately, and I don't think Barcelona were quick enough or smart enough to catch on.
Yeah, I don't like that Russo Blackstenius pairing against teams that sit deeper, but I think you're right. When a team's high up, obviously that's lunch for Stina, but also I think you make a good point that, like, at that point Arsenal are going long, right, and they're getting tired and they're getting penned in, and they're starting to, clear the ball and just get it clear. And so having Russo a little bit deeper to do that hold-up play really makes sense. I think that partnership really makes sense in that context. And actually, we started the Real Madrid away leg like that. And that made a lot of sense because we were dropping the ball in behind, and because we were playing on a swamp, it was getting stuck, and I could really see that. And, but look, just after that, Eva Payor has a header, and as much as we're, when you have a tactic like force them wide, so they put crosses in, you're playing the numbers, because a couple of crosses, a Barca player is going to connect. Eva Pyle was quite strong at that. She connects on one in the first half, it goes wide. She connects on one in the second half, it loops up onto the roof of the net. If either of those go in, again, this is probably a very different final, but you're right. There's a counter-attack where Stina kind of breaks away, and she should probably pass to Beth Mead on her right, I think, looking back at that. Very grateful Beth didn't hold that against her a couple of minutes later, because Arsenal get a corner. And I think the thing I love about this goal the most, Jamie, is the patience everyone shows. Mariana gets the ball back on the right. She could easily hack that back into the box. She doesn't. She stays calm. She looks. She finds Beth. Beth comes in on her left foot, and I'm thinking, here we go, left foot shot. She doesn't. She has the presence of mind to slip it to Stina. And before we go into the emotional aspect of it, it's just a really nicely worked goal, I think.
Oh, it's sensational. Like you said, Tim, we saw it a little bit. As horrible as it was, we did see it at the Broadfield Stadium against Brighton, that Mariona Patience on that top right corner of the box, or top left if you're going the other way, in that like right-hand channel. She does like to hold the ball up a little bit with patience. And to find Beth on the top of the box, I immediately thought, we've seen it a lot of times this season. Beth cuts in, does the the legacy cut in from Beth Mead onto her left, and she fires it into the legs of the defender. We've seen that a lot. To place that ball, it's something that I think you'd expect Aitana Bonmati to play in this game. You wouldn't really think it's going to come from Beth Mead in a central area. To have the patience and the vision to play that ball, Stina takes a touch. She kind of does throw her leg out, but it's a great touch, and she finishes it so well. And I thought it was so funny what she said at the parade today, but she was saying, like, I didn't have time to think. I just kind of threw it into the back of the net. But to everyone else, it's a world-class finish. It's so not a Stina Blackstenius final finish. It's a very world-class strike, a goal that's set up by a world-class assist. And I think the Barcelona keeper, like Katakoi, needs to do better. She doesn't even dive because she just assumes it's offside. I don't know why you ever do that in a final. However, it goes bottom left. She tricks on Abatier. She puts it into the bottom left corner. At this stage, I dove across Tom Ma. I was like on top of everyone's backs. There were tears at this stage. I thought it was like above 80 though. I thought it was the 80th minute. So I got a cruel reality shock. But this is just Arsenal playing Arsenal football against the best team in the world. And I think that sums up the season.
Yeah, I think it was quite a Stina finish in that I think when it's instinctive and she has no time to think, like she misses it's not a bad miss or anything. She misses the first one because she's running at goal and she has time to think about it, whereas this is like far more instinctive. And to be fair to Katakol, if anyone's going to be offside, it's probably going to be Stina, to be fair. Likely place for her to be. And if my nerves were up a little bit at half time, thinking, "Ooh, we've got a real chance here," again, I'll ask you your immediate emotional reaction. My immediate emotional reaction was again to protect myself, and I kind of said to myself, Barca are going to come flying now, like the next. I didn't even think 5 minutes. I was like, the next attack, the next couple of attacks, just like, don't let them equalise straight away. Like I segmented it in my head. So I was like, get to 80 minutes, like, because I really thought they'd fly at us. Once you'd kind of calmed down and peeled yourself off of Tom and co, what was going through your head at that moment?
Can I be honest? I think my head was thinking, yes, this is Barcelona. Like, look at the talent that they have. They bring on like Esme Brutes and like Selma Paralelo comes on. There's some real attacking strength in those numbers as well. So my head's saying that. But Tim, honestly, in like my heart and my belly, I think this is going to be the only goal of the game. When you're watching Leah Williamson clear away the ball, when you're watching Payor miss headers that she usually sinks, Van Domslaar saving goals, Pina hitting the crossbar, I just thought this is going to be the only goal of the game. And that's why when I looked at the clock and I saw 75 minutes, I was like, this is too long. This is an eternity. I honestly did. I thought this is it. Like, I honestly think we're going to win from here. I don't know why. Logically, it probably wasn't the best football knowledge-based opinion. However, no, I did think this is the one.
Yeah, I'm with you. I kind of trust my gut feelings when I'm watching football, and that, like, they can always, things can happen out of the blue. Once we got through, and I don't think Barca did particularly, or we didn't allow Barca to come flying out. I think we were emotionally very under control. Again, big tribute, I think, to the calmness of the manager. We didn't, like, the players didn't go, this might happen type thing, which they could very well have done. I think they were just so calm. Okay, 1-0, all right, let's do our jobs kind of thing. And that, for me, is just the most impressive thing about the whole performance, the emotional regulation of it. I'm with you. Once it got to 80, I had that little voice in my head, which I was desperately trying to tell to shut up. But I just had that little voice in my head, and you can never be certain against an opponent of this quality. But and I've been wrong before, but I was like, I think we've got this. I think, look, if Fenerbahce like smacks one in from 30 yards or something, like, fair enough, But I didn't. I thought that I didn't think they'd slice us open. I thought corner or long shot, which Barcelona can do. But I had real kind of confidence at that stage, and I haven't watched the whole game back yet. Just haven't had a chance. haven't been home for more than like a couple of hours. But the kind of official UEFA highlights show nothing after the goal. They show no chances or anything like that, and it just goes straight to the final whistle. And I'll talk about how I reacted at the final whistle in a minute. What was your reaction at that stage?
Tim, I cried so many tears. Like, immediately cried so many tears. I welled up a little bit at the before kickoff, because I'm not usually a sport crier. I don't think I've ever cried at the sport before. I think the Real Madrid Emirates Stadium game, the women's game, that is, when we came back and won 3-0, there was definitely tears in my eyes, but I've never cried. I was sobbing. It was like body rack sobs. It was, this is the best moment of my life. And to be here in Lisbon, in Portugal, with my friends, with the Arsenal fans. Arsenal have just beaten Barcelona in a Champions League. Like, it was the most euphoric feeling I've ever felt. Like, if I could bottle that feeling and relive it forever, I would. And there's not one thing I'd change about this weekend. It was genuinely the best weekend. They did it. This team that have been basically written off by most people for the last fortnight, and rightfully so. Look, I understand where that came from. We were writing them off, let's be honest, Tim. I think everyone was, other than themselves. And Leah Williamson said at the trophy lift today, like, do you believe in magic? And that's exactly what it was. I have cried since. I will probably cry again. I will watch the game again tomorrow until everyone in my house tells me to stop. But yeah, I honestly think it might have been one of the best moments of my life.
Yeah, I'd very much echo that. I cried, absolutely, as soon as the final whistle went, and it wasn't like, it was like a few tears, but nothing like uncontrollable. And then my wife sent me a video of my daughter celebrating, and that really set me off. And I was absolutely sobbing. And Sophie Downey from Girls on the Ball came over. Could see I was in a bit of trouble, I think. And someone covered the women's game for so long, done so many miles and all of that. Someone I've known for a very long time, probably recognised what a big moment that was. But then it was quite kind of funny, because I'm just sitting there and because everyone's got their heads down working, right? And at that moment in the press box, what it's like. Everyone's like, but I don't even do on the whistle match reports or anything like that. For me, it's all about post match at that stage, and obviously I get some time for post match because it takes ages for everyone to come out. Completely understandably, you've got a trophy lift. I had a lot of time to pull myself together, but I was absolutely gone. And at one stage, Emma Sanders from the BBC was sitting across from me, and she asked me, I think she asked me a question about Stina's contract or something, because she's furiously typing, and I was like, I turned around, she probably saw my face was bright red, and I was like, I'm not going to be much use to you in these moments. The next 20 minutes or so, I'm afraid I'm gone, I'm done, kind of thing. But did manage to kind of pull myself together a bit. And the post-match, like I said, I had a long time, because obviously everyone's celebrating. It takes a long time for everyone to come out. And Renee's press conference, I kind of said, I'm going to keep this question short because I can't talk for very long without crying. And very much like the same for Kim Little as well. And, seeing those players come through the mix zone, it was really nice because like in Sweden last year, I went across when we went out in that first qualifying round, and one of the most awkward moments in this whole gig for me was standing in that mix zone, players walking past and not knowing how to look at them, because on one hand I didn't want to look away, but on the other hand, like, just that awkward moment of eye contact when you understand they've gone through a massive professional disappointment and you're really disappointed. You don't want to look away, but you also don't want to smile or anything like that. And it's quite an awkward moment. And, to have, to see players come through the mix zone just so happy, and, got to speak to a few players. And I ran into, the day before the game, I ran into, at the match day -1 stuff, I ran into Aaron Dantino, the assistant manager, had like a little chat with him, and he was talking about how confident they were, how happy they were, how excited they were, and everything. And I said to him, "I see you tomorrow with the trophy." And it was really nice. He walked past me in the mix zone at the exact spot, basically, that we'd met the day before, and he was like, "Told you," and it was just like really nice kind of little moments like that. And then again, what it's like post-match, it's very intense. Like, quickly the managers come in, quickly mix zone, quickly get quotes, ask questions, type them all up, and that period's very, very intense. And then I got straight in a cab to Pink Street, and it was very intense for a very different reason. Lots of singing and dancing. There was a DJ in a club I was in who got the message because The Angel was played, Voulez-Vous was played, I think, and there was an Arsenal fan who was on his stag do, completely separate from the game, and it was great. He was literally, sorry, this is a bit of a ramble. I had BBC News calling me to go on BBC News, and I was in this nightclub, and they were like, "Oh, we can do it on Zoom," and I was like, not only is it incredibly noisy in here, full of drunk Arsenal fans, there's a gentleman behind me who's wearing leather hot pants. He's got lobster claw gloves on, and he's wearing a mask, which is, he's wearing like cock and balls, basically, as a mask. And I was like, I don't think I can come on BBC News at the moment. And he was owning the dance floor, singing his heart out to The Angel, and just some great moments. But then I met you guys later, and me and Jason, our videographer, like, we just had to go somewhere a little bit quieter because it was all so intense, and went into a little bar and sat down, met you guys, and then we kind of carried on a little bit. But after that, I don't know about you, I had to go back to my hotel because it was all so intense. And I sat on my hotel bed. I got in my hotel about 1:45. I sat on my bed just like looking at my phone, periodically crying until 4:30 in the morning because I hadn't seen any of the content, and just like, just getting that kind of online, and I just needed to decompress a little bit. But yeah, what was your, well, obviously I saw you and we recorded a video as well, but like, how did you experience that immediate post-match? And can you sum up what this means?
Honestly, Tim, like, funny little anecdote. I was also on the BBC. I think I was scheduled for like 10:25, and I thought, great, I'm going to go back to the Airbnb because it was on the metro line, like 2 stops away from the station. Just drop all our stuff off, get some drinks from the nearest supermarket, go about our day, then go to Pink Street. And then I thought, okay, well, I'll get the train a little bit early, get on the BBC just a bit out of Pink Street, and then head in. I'm on the train with my 2 friends, and we end up going the wrong way without realizing. By the time we realize, it's actually pulling into the station of the stadium. So that was completely on accident. I'm on the BBC no one tell the BBC this, guys. Please don't tell the BBC this. But I do have like a cider in my hand. I'm on the BBC trying to tell them about Arsenal women winning the Champions League. Genuinely so far away from Pink Street. The trains get suspended. So then we have to get an Uber all the way to Pink Street. And then it was just amazing. It was amazing. So many people. Like I went and saw Freddie Cardi, who was there obviously from the Guna, and that was emotional. Like the pride I had for that guy that day was immense because he's been everywhere. He's covered all the miles. So it was amazing. It was friends. It was people that I've seen online, massive Arsenal fans I've never interacted with before. So many people came up and said, like, we love Tim Stillman. Thank you for being a part of the Arsecast. I was like, thank Tim Stillman for letting me being a part of the Arsecast. And it was just a night of like family and everything. It hadn't sunk in. Like I cried on the final whistle, and since then I was fine because it hadn't sunk in. We stayed out for a little while longer. I think we got home at maybe 3:34. I didn't fall asleep until way after that because like you, Tim, I was chronically online for an hour. I couldn't sleep. I was so wired. It was just like the reactions from the players, the reaction from the fans. I had one of my friends from Melbourne text me who's a massive, massive Arsenal fan. He's actually an Arsenal men's fan, but follows the women's team now because of me. And he was like, sent me a photo of him crying. And I was like, this is amazing. So yeah, it was absolutely incredible. This means everything, Tim. This is the Champions League, right? It's been a really, really hard couple years not as an Arsenal fan, but just for the Arsenal Football Club. It's not been hard, but there's been a lot of turbulence, right? Where this historic club that's basically been known to dominate English women's football, and that mantle's kind of been taken from us, from a team far superior in terms of the domestic caliber. That, let's be honest, Chelsea have absolutely dominated it. And I think since moving here, like the first experience I had when I touched down in the UK, I was actually in Ireland. I've told this story a million times. I was up in Mountain trying to listen to the Paris FC game, and we lost on penalties. And I was like crying in the middle of Ireland on a road trip, and now winning the Champions League. And those are the two moments I had from beginning to end of my time here. So it felt full circle. It's so special. This club is so special. The fans are so special. Going to the parade today and seeing fans that couldn't go to Lisbon crying because they were watching their team lift the trophy. It's just so many kids. Like there was I reckon as young as 2 on her dad's shoulders wearing an Alessia Russo kit. And I was like, this is what it means. This is what it means. Arsenal women deserve to be the ones in the spotlight because we've always been the ones leading women's football here in England. So 2-time champions, the only in the land. You will never sing that.
I think that's a great note to end part 1. So we will do. And we'll come back right after this with your questions. Okay, welcome back to the Arsenal Women Arsecast on Arseblog.com in part 2, where we look back. We've already looked back on Saturday's Champions League final, but we'll take your questions. But before that...
Let's go!
Part 2. As ever, we took some of your questions on BlueSky, and I want to start with this one, Jamie, because we ended on quite an emotional kind of end, and I kind of want to keep that vibe going a little bit. And I really like this question from Ben at BenJW. Excuse me. Do you have a personal highlight or moment from the match or trip to Lisbon that you'll always associate with this triumph?
Honestly, I'm not a Coldplay fan, but when they played Paradise by Coldplay after the final whistle and it panned, it's that lyric, I can't even remember what it is. Something about a girl with a dream. When she was just a girl, she expected the world, that one. And Renee Slegers is like on the screen. Tears again, like I'm sobbing, Tim. It's just wow. Yeah, that song's going to be one for me because I'm not a Coldplay fan by any means, but I feel like now I'm going to be roped in by Chris Martin. I think someone actually mentioned this. Caitlin Ford's sliding challenge, when she celebrates that with the Arsenal fans, gets up and kind of sets the tone. That was something I think I celebrated just as hard as the Stina Blackstenius goal. The people in front of me were like, who is this Australian and why is she in the stadium? But yeah, those are the two for me, Tim. Share me with you.
Yeah, I think our videographer, Jason, by the way, he told me that in stoppage time, he was just like he had his head in his hands and the women behind him asked him if he was okay. Like, because they thought he had like sunstroke or something, and he was like, "No, I'm from Sydney. I don't have sunstroke. I'm just this is not a medical emergency. I'm just not doing very well." Yeah, I am, if you'll forgive me, a little bit of indulgence, because I thoroughly believe, this role I have is a massive privilege, and rule number one in journalism, never make yourself the story or make anything about yourself. And I believe in that wholeheartedly. However, this one indulgence, I'm going to share a recording, which I'm hoping Andrew will drop in, because I don't know how to do that. This is from the mix zone when a few of us were talking to Alessia Russo.
We had to be really patient with our press. We had to run a lot, and we had to be comfortable not having the ball.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I'll give this man a cuddle.
Yeah, so we're talking to Alessia Russo there, and obviously the dopamine's going, and that's Leah Williamson interrupting the huddle to give yours truly a big hug, and then the kind of the thumping you can hear on the track. That's Katie McCabe slapping me on the head, and yeah, I mean that's look. Treading the line between like fan and journalist and all of that. But I spent most of this game as a fan. Let's be honest. I experienced it as a fan. And as a fan, that was a lovely moment. But but just nice to see like the players so happy as well. But like clearly as well, like on Pink Street afterwards, just the kind of the hugs, the songs, all of that was so special. And just seeing everyone really enjoy themselves. It looks like the players really enjoyed themselves as well. We didn't get the benefit of Jess Glynn on Pink Street, but glad the players got that privilege. But yeah, I felt that was something we should address. Let me ask you another question, and I won't contribute to this one. How about okay. No, I like this one. I like this one because maybe like some self-reflection, which is always welcome. It's from @C Boston. Huge fan of the show. Just listening back to the previous quad. My question is this. My question is this: as the game wasn't the one-sided luck fest we feared it might be, has Renee Slegers taught us all a lesson in how we perceive Arsenal women and their capacity to win? I'll just say yes. What do you reckon?
Yeah, this is my favourite question. I had this one saved. I think it's such a good question. I think this final has taught everyone, media, fans, spectators, just casual football enjoyers, a lesson that like you need to. I think we suffer from a bit of tall poppy syndrome when it comes to the Arsenal women. I think we're grown acclimatized to the players that we have. You look at someone like Leah Williamson, who we've had for so many years at our club, Katie McCabe, who we've had for so many years, Beth Mead, Kim Little, and you forget their quality. You forget how good they are at football. You forget that Beth Mead was the star of the show when the Lionesses won the European Championships. Leah Williamson wore the armband for England in that same tournament. You've got someone like Alessia Russo, who's just won the Golden Boot in the WSL. You forget that these players play for your team when you follow them so closely. And I think when you're looking at something so close, it's like when you're looking at a painting really close and you can see all the brush strokes and it doesn't look as good anymore. I feel like that's how it feels to be watching Arsenal women up close, and then you forget just how joyous it is. I think Renee Slegers has taught everyone a lesson of football is about enjoyment. It's about love. It's about happiness. And she's taught us that if you believe in the structure that you put out, there is no reason why you can't win. It comes with a little bit of the caveat that you can't have any players and still win the Champions League. But these are players that are perfectly capable. It was just about unlocking their ability. It was about getting the rhythm, bringing in someone like Mariona Caldente. She's the puzzle piece, right? She's absolutely made this Arsenal team what it is just by kind of adding the icing layer on the cake. Renee Slegers has brought that to Arsenal, and I'm so happy that she has. It's made us realise that the players that we have are so good enough to do this. They always have been. It was just about figuring out how they could do it.
Yeah, completely agree. And like I said, I think I did a lot of emotionally protecting myself in the semi-final and in this game. Have you got a question for me?
I do. This one's more a little bit about the game on an analytical side. It's from Ariella W. Tee you up a softer one. You said that to beat Barcelona, you have to be a mixture of perfect and lucky. In what ways were we perfect, and in what ways were we lucky?
Yeah, I had this one as well. Another moment I really liked, actually, a member of the Arsenal kind of women content team I spoke to before the game, I used that phrase again, you've got to be perfect and lucky. And when I opened my Insta at about 2:00 in the morning, I just had a message from them in my inbox that just said perfect and lucky. And that was it. I really like that. So the ways in which we were perfect, the commitment, perfect. Every single player gave absolutely every single ounce, and it wasn't just a physical effort. That's a mental concentration effort. The way Barca rotate positions, it's dizzying. And I think Leah said that, didn't she, on stage? She was like, if you were nervous watching it, imagine playing against it, type thing. So like, to be locked in concentration wise, because I've spoken a lot about the two games, other than the Levante one that Barca have lost this year, but I'm not pretending that that's an absolute blueprint. I am certain other teams have tried that and lost 5-0 against Barca this season. So being locked into the game plan, being relaxed, the kind of the psychological and physical side of it, Arsenal were perfect. They were absolutely perfect. Where they were lucky, like, maybe, like I said, you make a calculated risks when you say, right, we're going to push Barca wide, they're going to put crosses in, and we think we can deal with that. And Arsenal largely did. But like I said, Eva Payol had 2 headers. Ordinary, if that woman wasn't insanely cursed in the Champions League final, by the way, I think this is the 5th one she's lost.
Yeah, 5.
That is, God, what has she done to deserve that? Like, both of those could have gone in, let alone one of them. Like you said, she scored 42 goals this season. So, maybe a little bit of luck there. Like I said, the first 15 minutes of the second half, I started to get that feeling, we're going to get tired, we're going to get worn down. But I think Renee made the right changes to stretch the game a bit. And, the kind of, I think the game plan was pretty perfect. I think the players' commitment to it was perfect. After that, the luck is in the small details, basically. So those 2 Eva Payol headers, maybe that Onabache shot from the edge of the box, which just flies wide. If you watch it from behind, Leah Williamson is very close to deflecting that. Mm-hmm. And on another day, she deflects that and it goes in. So those are the ways in which Arsenal were, quote unquote lucky. But at the same time, Barca were lucky as well on a couple of occasions. Like, I don't think they played freedom on them offside. I don't think that was an offside trap. Like, that could easily have... I don't even think Arsenal got like an advantage from the offside per se. And at the same time, like, we did have other chances. Like, this wasn't a robbery, this game. This was a tight, even game. Probably could have gone either way. I think the XG was like 1.0 to them, 0.6 to us. So on XG, you're probably looking at like a 1-1. But, I think Arsenal had their chances as well. This, to me, was an even game, and Arsenal got the moment, basically. And that's more than you can ask for against Barcelona, I think. I'm going to go to this one. This is a slightly wider question as well from our friend Adam Salter at Adam-Salter4. What sort of recognition should this team be rewarded in the long term for this achievement? Presentation today was done in front of a mural showing the 2007 team hoisting up the UEFA Women's Cup. Should something similar exist for this team around the stadium area, maybe even a statue? What should we be doing here? Statue, renaming it the Renee Slegers Stadium?
I've got 2 suggestions. Rename it the UEFA Mariona Champions League 4 in a row. That's sensational. And build a statue of Kim Little. Those are my two suggestions. I got someone saying, why don't we add this Champions League team to that mural? But isn't the whole point is that there's 2 unbeaten teams next to each other, right?
It's called the Invincible.
Yeah, exactly right. So let's do it again. It's been 18 years since an English team has won the Champions League. This is not like, it's not like if another Spanish team were to win it. It's not the same significance. This is the first time an English team has won the Champions League in 18 years. It's Arsenal again. Chelsea have won 6 consecutive WSL titles and have been battered by Barcelona every time that they've played them, bar maybe last year. So something needs to happen. I want a statue of Kim Little, Tim. She's done everything for this club. Like, she continues to be, even now, one of the most underrated players in the world. She is. Build a statue of Kim Little, or maybe one of like Katie McCabe with a cigar in her mouth. That would be top.
Susie Rack asked Leah Williamson today, "Are you starting the Kim Little Ballon d'Or campaign?" And Leah's answer was, "If it had ever been up to me, she'd have 4 already." Exactly. Which, and yeah, we should mention Kim's performance again, because I think a lot of people, maybe myself included, were worried about like a Kim Mariona double pivot. Is that going to be too open against Barcelona? It wasn't. There's a brilliant moment in the second half where Bon Mati is desperately trying to get away from Kim Little to get a shot off, and Kim Little's like her shadow is just like, not today, Satan. Like, you are not getting rid of me. And for, we talk a lot about, her age and the stage of her career that she is undoubtedly at, but at 35 to play 90 minutes in that heat, in that game, out of possession, doing that much work, I'm thrilled for her. I said to someone on Twitter today, I was like, everyone deserves it, but she deserves it a little bit more. And I think for her standing in the game, I think particularly probably because she played for Scotland and therefore, wasn't really ever getting to the final stages of international tournaments. I think that's maybe had an impact on. It's strange within the game, her reputation. She's not underrated within the game. Mm-hmm. Like every player, like you talk to like some of the biggest stars, like Megan Rapinoe, because she played in the US as well. Like all the American players love her. Hope Solo says Kim Little's the best player she ever played with. So within the game, her reputation is pretty amazing, but it does feel like she's never quite had that, this is one of the best players ever. And I'm really glad she got this moment, because that's going to cement it now. That's going to change that for her. And like I said, everyone deserves it, but she deserves it a little bit more. I might ask you another one, since I had a bite on that, which I quite usually do. We touched on this a little bit, I guess, but let's crystallize it a bit. This is from A at Woso Lover. What was the moment for you that hope switched to something more during the final? And they say Caitlin's clearance for me, I think.
Oh, I think I had hope before the final, too. I'm not saying like arrogance anywhere before the Saturday. It came in on match day. I had hope before the final. I was like, again, I think we were at breakfast and I was talking to Tom Ma. I always shout him out. He's the best though. And he said, like, these Barcelona fans, we ran into some Barcelona fans and one of them said, like, we said to them, how do you think the game's going to go? And they said, there's only one outcome here today. We were like, okay. We were just trying to get a friendly chat in. No worries. That's fair enough. And Tom looked at me and was like, Icarus flew too close to the sun. And I said, that's very true. And from there on, it just felt like there was an air of arrogance to Barcelona. I'm not necessarily saying the players, but, obviously the comments that came out of the club, the fans, basically every Barcelona fan I saw on Sunday was wearing a match day shirt because they didn't bring spare clothes. All kudos to them. I would have worn an Arsenal shirt. But anyway, so it did feel like I had hope before the game. If we're talking in game, that Caitlin Ford one is exactly the one. I think I mentioned it earlier. Again, when she just turns up and celebrates, those are my favorite moments in football. There's another moment where Leah Williamson in the first half, instead of clearing the ball out for either a corner or back across for a throw-in, she like just takes a touch and like curls it around and then plays it into Freedom Warnham. And it's just moments like that where you're saying these players aren't just here to clear the ball away and like hope for the best and play a low block. They're here to win this game. So there were little trickles of moments for me. It wasn't really a turning point. Something just happened on Saturday, and I think everyone in my camp at least were saying, hey, I don't know. There's a little bit of hope here. I don't know where it's stemming from. And hey, it came true though.
Yeah. I think Emily Fox's Roadrunner act. Yeah. I looking back on it, I really feel that was a no, we can hurt you too kind of moment. Do you have a question for me?
I do. There's 2 similar questions here around the same vein. This one's from Biased Arsenal Chicago. I've been deliriously happy since Saturday, as have I. But Arsenal were the first team since 2015 to win without winning their domestic league. Will this amazing win stem talent changes that need to be made in the squad to actually win the WSL next season, or will it push the club to make those changes faster? And then Prashan also asked, how do we capitalise on this, not just on the pitch, off the pitch as well, to go on and become European royalty from here?
Yeah, I don't think it will lead to like a seismic change in anything from the club. I would say it's something I'll address as well, is that financially this doesn't change anything. In fact, I believe there's a good chance Arsenal lost money competing in this final, because the prize money is very poor from UEFA. It's very low. And, Arsenal flew all of their staff out, as they should. The young players as well were all, like, everyone was there. 5-star hotel and all that, which is absolutely what they should do. Chartered plane and all of that. But the Champions League prize money situation is that it covers costs largely, but then when it comes to a final, the level of kind of, I don't want to say pomp, but the level of prep and everything that you kind of do surrounding a final, you basically lose money by winning the Champions League, which is weird. So financially, it doesn't really change anything. It might do commercially. For example, I imagine there'll be another uptick in attendances next year. So like further down the line, there should be like secondary financial benefits. But I don't think it will change the club's thinking too much. I think plans for the summer were in place anyway. I don't think they'll drastically change. But what I think and what I want is more around like mentality, culture, things I've talked about a lot on this podcast and a lot to other people, which I really think means a lot to Renee as well. I went on some preview shows before this, and I said this several times before the final. So on one hand, self-reflection, try not to emotionally protect too much and like write things off to make yourself feel better. But something I said several times before this final, two things I said. One, Arsenal's top level performances can beat anyone. I know they can, but we don't do it consistently enough. That's the issue to me. Or our 70, 80% is not always where it should be. But the other thing I said to people is I genuinely don't believe, talent-wise, that there is a gap between Arsenal and Chelsea. I don't. I really, really don't. And maybe I'm horrifically biased, but I've never thought, I've almost never thought that. There's a couple of seasons where I think, okay, Chelsea have got a couple more players. Maybe around COVID time, I was thinking, yeah, actually it looks, and Chelsea are signing Sam Kerr and Pernilla Harder, and it's like, okay, all right, maybe the gap's growing. But generally speaking, I don't think it's been about talent. I think it's just been about that kind of knocking out the wins, like almost on autopilot. And that's what I really hope this changes. I really hope that it leads to some more of that. Obviously, there's stuff to do in the market. There's always stuff to do in the market. There are areas of the squad where the age is a bit too high and it's going to have to come down. And maybe there's a secondary concern about, will young players want to come to Arsenal because some young players have come here and not been able to play. But that's more what I hope it changes. I hope it just transforms a little bit. I don't think like Arsenal have I wouldn't call it like a mentality problem or anything like that. I don't think it's like an enormous like weakness or anything like that. But I just think to get to that absolute level like that Chelsea have been on, where they like Chelsea won the treble this year. And listen, I give less of a fuck about that right now, but it still hurts, right? That they just sweep up. They sweep up a treble and no one talks about it. And the team of the year has 2 Chelsea players in it because people are bored, right, of Chelsea winning all the time, and that hurts. So I think it's more about just having that reflexive, knocking out wins with like muscle memory kind of wins, and and Arsenal can do that, but just doing it all the bloody time and not having these kind of aberrations. That's more what I hope it kind of builds, if that makes sense. how about this one then? I quite like this question because I really agree with it. I think it's from Heinquin. Can it be said that Arsenal's transfer business in the last few years has been both lackluster overall, but low-key very good specifically? Mariona is the most impactful transfer since Viv, Emily Fox, Chloe Kelly, DVD2. Like, I really relate to this question because on one hand, Arsenal's overall recruitment probably hasn't quite been good enough, but there's, they list quite a few quite recent signings there who have lifted the level.
Yeah, Alessia Russo is another one, free of charge. I think there's a little bit of Arsenal. They've gotten, like, Emily Fox is the best right back in Europe, right? She's obviously been named in the Champions League team of the season, but she was better than On About yesterday. She was better than Lucy Bronze. Like, she was better than Ellie Carpenter. Like, those are the best right backs in Europe right now, and Emily Fox is clearing that level. Arsenal wanted her at a time when not many people were watching her in the NWSL at the time. People aren't really paying attention to it. Was just as she was cracking into the US women's national team. That's fair recruitment. Mariana Caldente is a bit different because that's a proven winner, right? That's a 3-time Champions League winner. That you don't really have to get a recruitment team to look into that. That's a player that's available. You want to bring her to Arsenal, and she's risen the level. It's about a brand. I think Arsenal have a brand, and Alessia Russo spoke about it when she first signed to Arsenal. She spoke about how that Wolfsburg semi-final played a big part in her wanting to come to Arsenal because she wants to play in moments like that. And she's just won a Champions League final with this team. So it's about the brand of Arsenal, the community, and the way that they put their women's team on a pedestal in order to attract this talent. I think they've done a really, really fantastic job at that. And all that was missing was the trophies. And now there's a Champions League, which is the highest honor in club football. So I think the recruitment's been really well. It's interesting how we tend to overlook those transfers, though, because DVD, the best thing Arsenal could have done is I don't even know if they were interested the year prior. I don't think they were, but her going to Aston Villa is perfect. She needed to go to Aston Villa for herself, for Arsenal. Her spending a season in a mid-table WSL team is the best case scenario for a player like that. We spent a bit of money on her, but she's so young. Her ceiling is still so much higher than where she is right now. So the recruitment is there. I think that there is also the obvious argument about the fact that it is lackluster. Like, throwing so much money at Kira Walsh was a little bit like, was it a bit short-sighted? Was it kind of saying, hey, we've got the money, we know it's not going to get accepted, especially that one late in the summer transfer window, a couple of days before the window shut. Barcelona weren't going to sell her at that point because they didn't have time for a replacement. So those are the things where I can see the frustration, because it's like a lack of aggression in the market is the issue that I have with Arsenal. It's okay, we're going to get the players that we can get for free, that we can convince that there's a project here, rather than go and compete with a club like Chelsea to go sign the best players in the world that are looking for a club. I'm still not upset that Naomi Goma didn't come to Chelsea. I think she's fantastic, but Arsenal right now don't need her. She doesn't fit the profile of someone that can play next to Leah Williamson. I think it's equally, we have to recognise the fact that the recruitment team and those signings that we've picked up, Emily Fox, Mariana Caldente, Alessia Russo, Daphne Van Domselaar, those four in specific, you build your team around those four, and it's been fantastic. It's more about getting the players that aren't as easy to get. It's about convincing the players that aren't ready to leave their club on a free at the end of their contract. It's about, convincing them that that's the destination. That's what this Champions League victory is going to do, right? Like, you look at a domestic treble. Yes, Chelsea are queens of Europe. They are not queens of Europe, luckily enough. They're queens of England. They're queens of their own backyard, but very, very comfortably. Like, 6 WSL titles, a domestic treble in Sonia Bonpastor's first season. I admit I was naive enough to think they would fall off under Sonia Bonpastor. I didn't think the transition would be as seamless as it was. So clubs are going to want to come to that, right? There's a new investment from the Reddit owner, Alexis Ohanian. It's a very, very nice place to go. But you've also got a club that have just won the Champions League, and so many players want to play in the Champions League. Like, I spoke to Jenna Neiswanger in January when she signed, just days after, and she said, I came here, I knew from when I was little I wanted to play in England, and I wanted to play in the Champions League, and she's just won it. So there's no bigger pool than playing Champions League football. It's going to be interesting, especially when you look at clubs like Man City. Obviously, Jill Roord has obviously announced her departure. She's going back to FC 20. They don't have Champions League football next season. There's a lot of turmoil there. Arsenal are now European champions. So, yeah, I think we can praise the recruitment team, but also expect and demand more from them in terms of being aggressive, and also say this is a really, really good stepping stone for what Arsenal can do with this Champions League trophy.
Yeah, ultimately, Renee has quite a small core of players that she seems to really trust. And I'd say if you looked at the list of unused subs from Saturday, they're quite familiar as unused subs. And I don't think any of them are bad players, but maybe some players that just haven't fitted. And maybe that isn't depth, because I'm speculating here, but maybe they're just players that Renee doesn't really want. So the names kind of look good on the bench, but if they're not coming on, then, I think that's that kind of second layer recruitment. Let's do one more question each. Do you have one for me?
I do. I was going to ask you a tactical one, but I'm going to finish off on this one as a broader question. This is from Pullover21 AWFC. Do you think the reason we won was because Renee didn't wear a suit? I want to know, Tim, we've spoken about like the signalling message of her kind of fitting in with the squad and the coaching staff, but in terms of just Renee Slegers being the most nonchalant person, looking like a grade 4 PE teacher at a Champions League final, showing up, celebrating like she was one of the players, like how special is that?
Yeah, one of the ones I had down was also from Katie out of Valti 13. Leah, the most important question of this whole thing, how iconic is it that Renee coached a masterclass Champions League win in an Arsenal t-shirt and shorts? It just felt right. There were two things I was sure of coming into this final: the starting lineup and the fact that Renee would be wearing Arsenal gear. Obviously because of the weather, it had to be t-shirt and shorts, but like if it had been a few degrees cooler, we'd have seen the gilet and the tracksuit. Like it's clearly we have spoken about it a lot of times, and obviously the questions are tongue in cheek, and rightly so, but it's definitely a big part of her leadership style to not separate herself from the rest of the coaching staff and to almost just have like a uniform. And I don't believe she did that, Rosengård. To be fair, I'm not sure Rosengård have quite the range of leisure wear that Arsenal do. But I believe at Rosengård she didn't do that, that she did, dress in her own clothes, as it were. It's absolutely, it's a conscious thing. And also the other reason I was convinced she wouldn't do it anyway is just because I don't think they wanted to treat the Champions League final differently. They want to treat it like any other match, and she's done that for every match, so she was going to do it for this one, keep things the same. But yeah, I do. And again, I guess, going a bit full circle, we were talking about Katie McCabe earlier. It's her. It's, that's authentically her. So absolutely. How about we finish on this one? And it's from Helen M at HXM829. Has this been one of the most erratic Arsenal women's seasons? From the lowest lows of Jonas leaving to the highest highs of winning a Champions League. And as a follow-up, how are you both going to recover? What do you reckon in terms of seasons? It's been a bit of a roller coaster, hasn't it?
Absolutely. Like from Rangers to this, honestly, I actually wasn't even there at the Rangers game. I was in Australia watching it in the middle of the night. From Rangers at Bournemouth to Häcken being 1-0 down coming into the home leg, and now playing a Champions League final against Barcelona. And let's talk about the fact that like it wasn't easy, right? Like they played Bayern Munich, they played Real Madrid, Lyon, Barcelona. The road to the final was the best teams in Europe right now, and they knocked them off. They beat Barcelona. They held a clean sheet against the best attack in the world. Well, not anymore at least. But like this playing group is so special, and I think that's why this season has been so sentimental, because that's why there was so much frustration, Tim, because we knew that the players that we had were always there, and it just never clicked over the last couple of years. There were so many good moments under Jonas, and we had those like League Cup victories. We had that semi-final against Wolfsburg. I will still hold like that night where we lost that semi-final as one of my favorite moments as an Arsenal women's fan. It was the most, like, I've never felt like we were on the cusp of something like more than I did in that moment until Renee Slegers came and stepped into the dugout. She's brought football back to life at Arsenal. She's brought love back to the club. She's got the players playing with smiles on their faces. This has been absolutely crazy. Watching like Arsenal West Ham at Bournemouth, that 4-3, and then the 4-3 at the Joy Stadium against Man City, having beaten Lyon and then lost at Villa Park because there was still kind of a weird, tiny, like 0.001% chance of maybe the fact that Chelsea would squabble the league. it's just been everything this season. It's been an absolute journey. And to finish it as champions of Europe is something. If you said that to me after the Bayern Munich game, I'd laugh in your face. I thought we were going to get grouped. If you said that to me after the Everton 0-0 draw, I would have laughed in your face. The Chelsea loss at Emirates Stadium. The turnaround on this season has been absolutely amazing. I don't know how I'm going to recover. I actually have to see half these players on Friday because I'm covering the England-Portugal game at Wembley Stadium, and I almost wish I wasn't, because I don't really want to cover football for at least another fortnight, because I want to be able to just like bathe in this for a while. I don't want to watch Leah Williamson play football. I want to just remember and kind of marinate in this victory for a long time. But it's just special. I said it at the start of the episode. This is the best. I also just want to shout out like Caitlin Ford, Steph Catley, and Kyra Cooney-Cross, because like you spoke to Steph Catley, and one of the quotes I thought was so beautiful about the fact that like football's not in the papers back home. It's not in the news. It's not our sport. She said she was an AFL nut. I grew up an AFL nut. I've followed Aussie rules more than I did football because it wasn't accessible. I just am so proud to like be an Arsenal fan. I'm so proud to be Australian. I don't know how I'm going to recover. Many tears and a lot of happiness.
Yeah, I'm going to do something I've never done before in this gig and take a little bit of time off. At some point, go on holiday with the family and all that, which I've not done in far too long. Just an absolutely bonkers season, absolutely incredible. And culminating in this, and this Champions League win is not only the culmination of this season, it's the culmination. It's like the culmination. Like we might never have, like, because if we do it again, it'll be like, don't get me wrong, it'll be absolutely incredible, and we've got every chance of doing it again. But for a lot of people, this is the first rodeo. Doing this, and even having experienced it in 2007, like the scale and level of interest, and like I hate saying that because like because it sounds like I'm diminishing what that team did in 2007. And by the way, they won a 2-legged final in circumstances like this, and they were missing their 2 of their best players. So absolutely not to diminish that, but it's just like the level of interest and everything like that is just so different now. So you can have like Arsenal women fans taking over a city like Lisbon. It's just I just never thought I'd ever see that. It never figured in my head that I'd ever see that with anything to do with Arsenal women or women's football. So emotional moments before the game, the fans, emotional moments afterwards, players and fans and all of that. And it's just, we're recording this on Monday evening, and I don't want this weekend to end. I really don't. I don't know how I'm going to cope with getting up in the morning and, it's half term, so lots of like childcare and stuff like that, which, don't get me wrong, that's not like an issue, but you know what I mean? It's like, I've got to go back to being a normal human being again, Jamie, and I don't know how I'm going to do it, like, because I've just been on this carousel really since I arrived in Lisbon on Thursday evening, and part of me is absolutely exhausted and the other part of me never wants to get off, but yeah, it's been a ride, all right, and got to experience it with some great people, yourself included. So why don't we finish things there? Because this podcast is always going to be longer than all the other ones. But Jamie, what a pleasure to experience some of that weekend with you, and to recant it here on this podcast.
Thank you as ever, Tim. Thank you for an amazing season. I'm so privileged to be on this podcast, and to everyone that like came up to me in Lisbon and all the fans that got to experience that either at home or in the stadium. Like, thanks for being an Arsenal fan and making this such a family and such a home. It's truly a pleasure.
What a note to finish on. We'll do a podcast next week or something, like a proper season review, player of the season moment. How are we going to do moment of the season when we just won the Champions League? Like, I think it might be when we won the Champions League, but maybe we'll do like a bit more forensic. Maybe we'll do a mailbag or something like that to wrap the season up before, like, taking a couple of weeks off. But as ever, thanks so much to everyone for listening. The numbers we've been getting on this podcast this season have been far more than I expected, to be honest, and another lesson for me in low expectations, I guess. But and really thanks to Jamie for everything she's added to the show and getting us on a regular schedule, and so it's not just dominated by my voice all the time, which was kind of a big ambition for this season. And for the first season to finish like this has been pretty special. So hope it's been special for you as well. Hope you managed to stop crying and you don't get sacked from your jobs because you just can't handle it. And we'll speak to you probably next week.
Most definitely, and it's an attraction. They're champions of Europe. So now they can bring the players in. This song's just going to get us all singing, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Just listen to this.